Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mikhail Peaton. As the gentleman said, I am Associate Director of African and African American Studies, also a doctoral candidate in Cultural Studies at George Mason, normally on the Fairfax campus, and so I'm glad to be out here in Prince William County. I want to thank you for your attendance, time, and attention in advance. I would also like to thank Ms. Liz Charity and all other organizations who are responsible for planning and executing today's event. Fourth, I want you to repeat after me. I am brave, but also a work in progress. In recent years, the United States, our country, our beloved country, has experienced 9/11, wars against terrorism, Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and the war on drugs. We've seen the first African-American president and tragically the downturn of the national economy. Currently, the younger folks among us in the audience are too youthful to worry about breast, lung, and prostate cancer, hypertension, diabetes, but they're not too young to develop good habits. We're overly caffeinated, beyond tired, constantly distracted by technology, and stressed the hell out. Communities of color are being challenged on their rights to vote, isolated from the marketplace, and have little incentive to seek access. Society perceives them as offering little other than singing, dancing, rapping, running, or putting a ball in a hoop. If you're not developing any of these skills, you're locked out of the rewards of a global economy. And on top of all of this, we can't defeat forms of discrimination based on racial, sexual, national, religious, gender, cultural, and political differences. I paint a bleak picture, I know. What does all this mean? Our communities are broken because the people in them are emotionally and psychologically scarred. Each person here has value and presumably interested in trying to improve their future and the future of their communities. I want to caution you to not think of achieving success as narrowly defined by popular culture. We need to redefine what success is, but in terms of healing our communities, we need to determine what our goal will be. Turn to the person sitting next to you and tell them, I am brave, but a work in progress. For the majority of young men and women here, success isn't predetermined by birthright. If birthright into a wealthy family, for example, predetermined being successful, former Governor Mitt Romney would have successfully became president in 2012. I simplify the process, yes, but more importantly, I want to stress that every young person will not have the same form of success. It won't come at the same time. Personally, I favor the idea of aspiring toward being great over being successful. Success can be interpreted as beating the competition and leads you to feel that somehow you've made it. You can relax, the work is done. But let me tell you something, greatness means working towards a goal that is more than temporary success. Working to accomplish your goal keeps you up at night. We all need to help each other be great. And from my vantage point, the path to greatness begins with education. More specifically, teaching critical thinking and deep learning. Turn to the person next to you and say, I am brave, and a work in progress. Cornel West once said that we need to stop thinking racially and instead start thinking morally. I adapt his thinking to say that victimhood will not prepare us for the future. We need to work on ourselves individually because dwelling on victimhood will limit us in the work we need to do to heal our communities. Equality means not sustaining narrow definitions on what it means to be a man, a woman, a U.S. citizen, a believer, a lover, and a human being. It is a crucial aspect of the American dream, and no one promoted the idea better than the brave human being, that brave soul, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His interpretation of the dream and the destiny for African Americans, but all Americans, as they struggled for desegregation and freedom, exemplified in I Have a Dream speech, challenges the precepts of our country, our nation. The leadership style of Dr. King that he learned from his father, Martin Luther King Sr., and what living in his community taught him was protest, accommodation, and self-help. Political protest is associated with the Old Testament theme of justice. Accommodation is an idea related to the New Testament in the theme of love. And self-help is an idea which goes, God helps those who help themselves, right? It comes from early Protestant Christians and their work ethic, or the view that a person's duty is to achieve success through hard work and thrift. ML, as Dr. King was called by his family, as a young man entered Morehouse College at the age of 15. Various childhood experiences until that point made him anti-white. He says it wasn't until he worked in interracial organizations that he lost these feelings. His intellect pushed him to integrate that fear of white Americans that they held towards Black Americans. He believed that fear was the chief reason there wasn't full integration at the time. It is reported that he would often repeat the following quote throughout his career: men often hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they do not know each other. They do not know each other because they cannot communicate. They cannot communicate because they are separated. The point of this quote is that many of us come to hold fear, hate, distrust, and prejudices within us. We don't know how to communicate with each other, even though we have similar aims. In our communities, we're scared of each other, and in many cases, ourselves and the greatness that awaits us. Turn to the person sitting next to you and tell them, you owe me $5 for sitting next to you. I'm joking. No, tell them I am brave, but I'm a work in progress. In our country, discrimination still happens because of race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, social class, nationality, religion, and disabilities. The protection of civil rights and human rights for everyone cannot be voluntary. Dr. King believed that he was a debtor and eternally in the red. He, like many of us, felt that he was in debt to his family and his community, but even those who went before him, the pioneers who blazed the trail for him. I pose the question to each of you: who are you? And what are you willing to do to heal our communities? The great poet Khalil Gibran writes in his book, Sand and Foam, the significance of a man or a woman is not what he or she attains, but rather in what he or she longs to attain. I want to leave you with a few words when doubt may creep in about the progress that you're making, the greatness that you're working towards. Your success is inevitable, and the brilliance that is your future is undeniable. What this means is that no one can deny your radiance. Keep in mind that in order to be great, you must be brave. Help someone else realize that they too can be great. Tell them, I am brave, but a work in progress. My name is Mikhail Peaton. I'm Associate Director of African and African American Studies. Thank you for your time, attention, and attendance.
All right, good afternoon, everyone today. I'm gonna try to follow what my fellow panelists said here just now. My name is Cherno Emuri, Prince William County Police Officer. First of all, I want to thank Ms. Charity for having me out here. Really appreciate the invite, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you very much, ma'am. And I want to thank my fellow officers here also supporting me. I want to thank some of my students who decided to show up. Thank you. You're going to get extra credit for that. Just joking, I'm not. But thank you for coming out here today. A short history about me. I'm from Sierra Leone, West Africa. If you know, that's the country where one of the three countries that's stricken with the Ebola virus right now. I have to be honest, it's heartbreaking sitting here today talking about my country that I still have family there. I can get a phone call from my mom or dad one of these days saying, hey, we've been contained or we've been contracted with the Ebola virus. But I pray against that. So I think about that every single day when I go to sleep. Don't mean to depress you that much, but I was born in Sierra Leone, raised up in Freetown, the city of Sierra Leone. I moved to the United States in '97, started high school, graduated high school in '99, finished high school, went to Northern Virginia Community College, graduated there in 2001, and in 2002 I went to Radford, graduated with my bachelor's degree in 2004. And in 2005, I decided to be a police officer, so I went to the police academy, graduated that in 2006. Then I got bored with the job and then went back to school. 2006, started my master's degree, finished that in 2008. And 2009, I wanted to do something else, so I started my doctoral program and finished that in 2012, I believe. In addition to that, I'm an associate professor here at I'm an adjunct professor at George Mason University and at Northern Virginia Community College, and I'm also vice president of Bearers of Hope International. It's a charity that supports women in Africa that were inflicted by the rebel war that actually affected the country a couple of years ago. With that said, I was invited here today to talk on community policing, and Mikai asked a great question: who are you? What are you doing to heal our community? And as a police officer, I'm going to start with two questions. The first one I'm going to pose to you is, what is community policing? Hold on to that thought, do not answer. The second one is, how do you view the police? So let's say you're driving home today and you look in your rearview mirror and you see the police behind you and you get pulled over. Besides saying, oh crap, I just got pulled over, what are you feeling in your mind? How are you seeing police officers? What are some thoughts? Let me just hear some thoughts. What do you think about police officers?
You're nervous, you're worried, you're thinking you're going to get in trouble.
Exactly, you're nervous and worried. What else?
Don't make any sudden movements.
Exactly, don't make any sudden movements. Exactly. What else?
Make sure they can see my hands.
Make sure they can see my hands. What else? What's that?
What I did wrong.
Exactly, what did I do wrong? Exactly. So these are things that pop up in your mind, and as a police officer, I see that a lot, and being an officer for about 8 to 10 years now, I can tell you some of the impressions that I'm getting out there is the police is going to shoot me. I'm afraid. Why am I getting pulled over? Quick example for you. I went to a call a couple of years ago. It was a domestic call between a husband and wife, and I knocked on the door. I got there. It was raining outside. I had my jacket and my hat on, and the mom opens the door, and there was a 3 or 4 year old daughter standing right next to her. And I remember she was talking to me, and the daughter just abruptly stopped the conversation. She said, "Hey, Mom, I'm scared. This is the police. He's coming here to shoot me. He's going to shoot me. He's going to shoot me." And then she just runs back inside the house. I remember taking my jacket off, took my hat off, and went inside and said, "Hey, can I speak with your daughter?" And I remember getting down on my knees and explaining to this little girl that I'm not there to hurt her. I'm not there to shoot her. I'm not there to kill her. But these are just minds and perceptions that we're getting for police officers. How do we fix that? And I had the relationship was broken between the community and police department, and the police department. In 2007, we passed the immigration policy here in Prince William County that gives police officers the authority to arrest and inquire on the citizen status of illegal immigrants. That severed the relationship between us and the Hispanic community and the African community. Folks who are not calling the police, folks who are not reporting victims of crimes, folks who are not reporting any crimes at all, because they were afraid. They were thinking that we were going to deport them. So how do you fix things like that? Basically, we started doing things like community education. We went out there and spoke to the community. We told them what we were doing. We told them how we were doing, and they shouldn't be afraid of us. And it comes in that every one officer can make that decision. I'm not going to sit here and speak on every officer, but I can tell you majority of the officers in my department knows what community policing is, and we're doing our best to make sure that folks are not afraid of us. This past community citizen survey that we did, I think we had about 98 or 99% satisfaction survey. You don't get that at all from any other jurisdiction. There are bad officers out there, there are corrupt officers out there, don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to sit here and justify everyone else. But what I can tell you is I'm doing my part. My part is getting out of my car when I'm driving, seeing some kids shooting hoops, just like what I was telling the delegate early on. Getting out of my car and shooting hoops with them, obviously. And then he pointed out, saying, some of the folks are going to run. Yes, they did some of them did take off running when I pulled up. But the good ones, if you're not doing anything wrong, you're gonna want to talk to the officer that just pulled up. So I remember getting out of my car every single time. If I see the kids shooting hoops, getting out with them, play basketball with them if I have time, shoot hoops with them, talk to them, tell them what I do, and just pretty much tell them about my background, where I'm from. And I was able to open up with these folks. Secondly, another key part of community policing is assigning that officer to that same neighborhood over and over. When I worked the street a couple of months ago, I was assigned in Dumfries, and we used to have a lot of problems in Dumfries. I remember knowing a lot of families, personally knowing a lot of families, because I would see them every single day, and I would talk to them every single day. So you build a rapport with them, and that's what community policing is all about, building the rapport, building the relationship, building back that trust that have been broken between the community and the policing, and the police department. We try to do things like Citizens Police Academy, wherein we open it up for folks in the community to come into the police department. You go through, I think it's 4 to 8 weeks, or it's actually a little bit longer than that, but you actually go through like the police academy, not the entire 6 months, but you go through several steps, and they'll show you exactly what we do, how we react. That comes into play when you see things on the media that police shoot and kill someone. You will understand why we use force to kill someone, why we use our weapons to kill someone, and you would get to understand why we use a pepper spray, a baton. So we put Citizens through this academy for them to see what we go through. So that's a great community policing aspect. Another one also we do for the youths out there is Police Explorer. We actually invite kids to come in and apply for this program, and for them to see what police officers are about, so they're not afraid of police. I remember asking some of my students in my previous classes, how do you view the police, and what do you see the police department as, or what do you see police officers as? And most of them will tell you exactly what I said early on, or some of the things you're saying, based on media facts, based on what they've seen on the media. Police are shooting and killing. Police, you should be afraid of the police. You don't get stopped because you did something wrong. And most times I try to tell them that if you have not done anything wrong, you shouldn't be afraid of the police. And I do understand your perception is because of what you're seeing on the public. One question that I ask my students always is, turn on the news by 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Just pick two random crimes that have just occurred and give me a description. Every single time I would have 5 to 10 students describe me: a black male, dreads, blue jeans, down their pants, or their pants is halfway down. And I did not put that idea in their minds. They actually saying it, repeating it back because they saw it on the news, they saw it on TV. So I'll tell them, learn from that. You don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be that girl that's on TV that's actually the news is asking questions, or actually your picture is all over the place. That's a lot to learn when it comes to community policing. I play my part, and I speak to my counterparts to play their parts also. And I'm a big advocate of community policing. I don't have an issue with it. I push for it as a police officer, and I'm always going to push for it. And in my department, we push for it also. We do things like community checks. We do things like business checks, worship checks, wherein we go into churches and we reach out to community leaders and ask them for their opinions. How can we help you prevent crimes? How can we help you prevent things from happening in your institution? So we have various things out there when it comes to community policing. With that, I'll leave you today my take on community policing, and I'm going to stick around. If anyone have any questions or anything to add, please feel free to ask any questions. With that, thank you very much.
Well, greetings, salutations, and blessings. I'm up here with some extremely intelligent gentlemen here. I said, wow, I said, doctor, future doctor. I was smart enough to just marry a doctor. So I might be the smartest man at this table right now. I just want you to know that. And she does come from George Mason University. So you're in good shape. You're in good shape. First off, I'm a kind of backtrack. I listened to everything both of them had to say, and it sounds like everyone in here is pretty much on the same page. Liz Charity has done an amazing job. We go back some years, especially with her son and myself, and I look around the room and I see so many people who are determined to make a difference, and that's why you're here. I mean, it's a beautiful day outside. You could have been some of anywhere, but you're sitting in an auditorium right now trying to figure out what can be done to heal our communities. So I see so many people out in the audience that work very, very hard to do just that. I know the Brown family and I go way back and have done so much to try to touch these communities. I'm elected to the Virginia House of Delegates. And it's interesting how that even comes about. My wife and I run a nonprofit organization in the community called Make the Future. Our claim to fame is we were the ones who rebuilt that Dumfries Boys and Girls Club after they had been closed for some years. We've been very, very active throughout the community. Our partnerships with Prince William County Juvenile Detention Center and Alexandria Juvenile Detention Center, and our mentorship programs and all of these things. And we do them because there's a need. We team with the Liz Charities and the Brown family because there is a need. We team with the Boys and Girls Club because there is a need. And it traces back to a lot of the things these gentlemen have said today. It's going to go back to education. It's going to go back to understanding your role in the community. As I was sitting there listening to them talk, I just finished up a program with Alexandria Juvenile Detention Center. And it was a 4-week program. We had 4 steps that we did. Step 1 was understanding what I did to put myself in this situation that I'm locked up. And I said, let's forget what everybody else has done. Anybody else's role means nothing in this. What was your role in this? What could you have changed to avoid being in here? Self-accountability. Step 2 was, what changes do I need to make in my life so therefore I don't end up back in a place like this? Who do I need to cut out of my life? Who do I need to avoid? What situations do I need to avoid? Step 3 was setting your own goals. Because what you see right now is you have a generation of people who are operating without any goals. And when you're operating without any goals, what happens is anything goes. You're not worried about doing something ridiculous because there's nothing that you're aspiring to. So that's not taking you off a track of anything. But when you sit down and you map out a plan, you understand that I can't go hang out with this subset group of people because they're going to do things that are going to hurt me when it comes time for me trying to get to where I'm trying to get to. And step 4, which was the most important step of all, was understanding how your success is going to positively impact your community and those that are around you. Because that's really what this is about when we start talking about healing our communities. This is bigger than us individually. When I was a teacher, people have heard me tell the story. There was a young lady who was in my class, and she said, Mr. Futrell, and I knew her outside of school because her brother played on my college basketball team. And she said, Mr. Futrell, she said, I want you to know this is my senior year, and I'm going to do just enough to get a 65D and pass your class. Now, this is a sharp young lady. If she told you she had straight A's and was going to school to be a lawyer, there's nobody that would doubt her. And I said, that's what's up. I said, but I'm gonna let you know, I'm going to do just enough to make sure you get a 64F and repeat my class. I bet I win. But it opened up a dialogue and a conversation, and one of the students in the back, I remember, asked me, he said, why do you care so much if we pass or fail? And it threw me off because I'm like, everybody should care that much if you pass or fail. And said, you guys have to understand, at some point you are going to be in my shoes. Maybe not necessarily you'll be a teacher, or maybe not necessarily that there'll be a delegate or sitting up here as a keynote speaker, but at some point or another, you're going to have the opportunity to impact someone else's life. And the question is, which way are you going to steer them? Our job is to push them 10 steps further than we ever even dreamed about going, because that's how we progress. I tell them all the time, if I can only get you to where I am, I have failed you, because we have not made progress. So I sit here and I look at these partnerships and the things that I do in this community, and it's funny, they reached out to me in 2011 and they said, Michael, would you be willing to run for office? And at the time, my wife and I were engaged, and they said, They said, well, you're getting married in September? I said, yeah. And they said, can you move your wedding? And I said, okay, well, this is probably not the right time. But then 2013 came around, and my wife and I sat down and we said, you know, we can sit here and complain about everything that's going on, or we can step up and do something about it. And so with that, we decided to run for office. Now, I tell my story a lot of times for a specific reason, not because I want people to say, look at me. You know, I'm a young man who was raised by a single father. He was college educated, owned his own home. It was next door to a crack house. You know, I had the only father on the block. I have a mother who has a substance abuse problem. She raised my younger sister and younger brother, which eventually I had a huge custody battle for my younger brother when he was 14 and I was 27, and I moved him out here with me. And when I moved him out here, I'll never forget, we got his grades in the mail and from Ohio, where his grades came in his freshman year. He had 3 Fs, 2 Ds, and a C. And I said, Lord have mercy, I'm in trouble. And I'm a former teacher, like I said. So I said, all right, what can we do? And I remember I sat my brother down and I said, let me ask you. I said, what is it that you want to accomplish? And he said, well, I want to go to college. I want to get straight A's. And I want to play college football. Now, mind you, he's never played football at any level. I told you what his grades look like, so straight A's and going to college, we're gonna have to do some work. But what I will tell you is, at the end of that first semester, he finished with 5 A's and 2 B's. Now, and that's not a testament to me, that's a testament to him. End of his senior year, he was a 4.0 student, National Youth Leadership Forum selected, volunteer firefighter, volunteer with the Boys and Girls Club, academic all district in football, now plays college football down at Ferrum University. But he had a plan. We put a plan and we sat down and said, how can we accomplish these goals? But it was a team effort. It was my church family. It was my political family. It was my regular family. There were a lot of people that were involved. There were programs that were involved. The Boys and Girls Club were involved. The fire station was involved. These programs are so important. Again, I told you my wife has her PhD in educational policy. She was raised by her older sisters. It's because of programs like Upper Bound that she had the opportunity to end up being called Dr. Bernadine Futrell. These same programs give me the opportunity to tell you that it's a true story that a young man can go from being raised next door to a crack house to being the youngest person to ever beat an incumbent, to being the only minority to ever beat an incumbent, and to being the youngest African American ever elected in the 395 years of the Virginia General.